Welcome to the Bike Talk with Dave podcast. I'm your host, Dave Mabel. Thanks tons for tuning in. I really appreciate it. This past week, I got a fun email introducing me to some dude riding his bike across the country, Taylor Nichols. Taylor is riding his bike 4,000 miles from San Francisco to Lansing, Michigan, to visit his 101-year-old dad. And while that itself is a cool story, especially since he's still currently in the midst of it, I think it's made even more fun because he's also a host on the great podcast, Bike Talk. Nope, not Bike Talk with Dave, but Bike Talk. To be honest, this is the podcast that caused me to add the with Dave on my title. So, anyway, it was super fun that they reached out, and I was able to catch up with Taylor when he made a pit stop in Minneapolis, Minnesota, itself quite a cycling destination. Now, I gotta say this, before we get into our conversation with Taylor, I'm kind of going out of the order from how I have done several interviews. Here's what I mean. A couple of weeks ago, even before talking with the Colesburg Gravel directors, so I'm way out of order here, I did have a great conversation with the founder of Orange Mud, Josh Sprague. We talked about how he and his team engineer gear specifically for cycling. It's an interesting story. They make mostly hydration packs, but their line is bigger than that. So I'm super excited to bring you Josh's story, and to his credit, his story is timeless. I like to say it's evergreen. No matter when you hear it, it is a good and relevant story. Because of that, I'm jumping this episode with Taylor up, since he's in the midst of his journey. And you're going to be able to follow along with the rest of his ride on his podcast, Bike Talk. And I think you'd enjoy following along while he's actually doing it. So, today we've got Taylor Nichols, and next week, Josh Sprague from Orange Mud. So with that said, let's jump into my conversation with Taylor Nichols and hear how his bike ride across the country is going. Taylor Nichols, this is a treat to have you on. You were the inspiration, I'm sure you know, for the name of my show, and I had to evolve the name of my show because of you, which is cool. But I have to admit that when I got a note from, was it Kelly? I got a note from...
Kelly Hargroves, yes.
Yes. I was like, oh my gosh, is this a cease and desist? So, Taylor, you're a host with Nick Richard, right?
Mm-hmm, correct.
With a T.
Yep.
Of
Bike Talk.
Of Bike Talk. I wanted to say Bike Talk podcast, but you guys are on the radio. You're syndicated across the nation, which is super cool. I want to talk about that. But that's actually not the most interesting story you've got going on right now, as you are riding your bike from LA. And I mean, gosh, you essentially did the PCT on bike.
Yeah.
Up north and now across the country to visit your dad in Lansing,
Correct.
Michigan, which is super cool. Let's talk about, I want to talk about your bike trip because it's a cool segue into Bike Talk, your radio/podcast show. You're visiting your dad, and I'm super curious about this. He's 101. What was the spark that made you say, hey, Dad, I'm going to come visit you. You're 101 now, but I'm going to ride my bike there. What spark, right. What made you say, A, have that idea, and B, say yes?
Right. Well, it's funny. I was riding through western Montana, which is kind of mountainous. And I came upon a whole bunch of guys riding motorcycles. And, when you're riding on these back roads on a bicycle, you see a lot of groups of motorcyclists, not gangs, not like, the Hells Angels, but, 5 or 10 or more sometimes of these great big motorcycles riding across the country. And I happened to stop and talk with them for a while, and they were the sweetest guys. They were already drinking beer at like 11:30 in the morning, and we were talking, and they said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm riding my bike from my daughters who live in San Francisco to my dad." Who lives in Michigan. And I said, my dad's 101. And without missing a beat, one of the motorcycle guys said, "Well, you better hurry up."
For sure. My first thought is like, why didn't you fly out to see your dad and then ride home? But
Exactly, which is
you do
also
you,
great.
man.
Yeah.
So what
Um,
sparked the idea?
it is something that I've wanted to do for the longest time. I've done a few bike trips, a week long, 10 days long, stuff like that. But I've never done anything really from point A to point B and really across the country. And I knew that I wanted to go to Montana and North Dakota and all of that. So I just decided, I'm an actor by trade, and that's why I live in LA. And May and June are often kind of slow months.
Mhm.
So this was just a good time for me to say, okay, here's 2 months. I think I can do this. So I kissed my wife goodbye. I rode my bike down to Union Station in LA, and I took the train from Los Angeles up to San Francisco. And then I spent a couple of days with my daughters there. And I said to them, write a letter and I will hand deliver it to your grandfather. And so they wrote letters, and I put them in my, on panniers, and I took off across the Golden Gate Bridge, and I've been riding for 41 days now, and I haven't taken a day off, and I've done almost 3,000 miles.
Wow.
Um, and I just liked the idea of connecting my children with my dad. Like, that was the whole point. And what's been fun about this is many people in our family, our family is pretty close knit, even though we're spread out. I have brothers in Colorado, and a nephew and a niece in New York, and all over. But even though we're all spread out, it has kind of brought the whole family together, watching me go across the country, with emails and texts and things like that. And so it's been really nice. I've gotten a lot of support from my brothers and my dad of like, I can see where you are, keep going. And so it has brought the family even closer together, which I think is really nice.
Yeah, that's really cool. Do you have like a spot tracker? Are you like on Spot or whatever? They just kind of following your
Well, I
phone or
have my
whatever.
phone, Find My Friends on my phone. They've
Okay.
been using that. And
Okay.
I've been posting on Instagram at taylornichols.bikelife. And so they've been watching those things. And then we've been talking about it on the show on
Yep.
Bike Talk.
Yep.
And then, you know, random texts and pictures and things like that.
Yeah. Oh, that's super cool. That's kind of a neat way. Now, your dad's 101. Is he like waiting with bated breath? Is he like, dude, get here soon? Or 101 is
uh,
pretty amazing. That in and
Yeah,
of itself is a
he's
story.
he's going to be 102 in September, so that's
Oh,
coming
wow.
up. No, he's doing really well. He lives in the house I grew up in.
Wow.
There are, there it's a two-story house with a basement, and he goes up and down the stairs. He still drives. We wish he wouldn't, but he does. He plays golf. He's he said to me one time, the only people who really want to live to 100 are the people who are 99. and
That's
but
fair.
he's taught me a lot about life and death by realizing, you don't get to choose when you die. And my dad's still alive, so he's still living. He's definitely slowed down. He takes a lot of naps and things like that, but he's still living. He goes to the theater, he goes to concerts, he goes out to dinner. He has a lot of friends. He works hard at keeping younger friends, and he
Hmm.
works hard at being really involved and being needed. He has raised a lot of money for charities in Lansing, Michigan, where he's from, and he continues to work for those charities. And he's worked really hard for a charity in Sudan, building a school for children there. So these are the things that I think he thinks I'm alive. So what am I going to do? So he's living his life, which is really wonderful.
I wonder if the statement can kind of be morphed into the only people who want to be 100 or get to age 100 are those having fun
I
and
I
those
think
staying
that's
active.
yeah, I think that's it. Both active and fun. And I think if you extrapolate fun to optimism, he's an optimist
Hmm.
and he's active. He exercises and walks and all of that.
And golfs and drives. That's, I mean,
Yeah.
at 101, that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
like, I hope to be doing that at 80. You know what I'm saying?
I do too.
I'm definitely not a spring chicken anymore, and I'm rehabbing this blown out knee, but with optimism, I'm doing all that. So sometimes I feel old, and
Yeah.
sometimes I don't feel old. And
Did you have surgery on your knee or not?
I did. Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
good. Yeah.
Just 3 months ago. So
Yeah.
still working
Good.
back. Went for a
Yeah.
5 mile bike ride yesterday,
Good.
and went
Yeah.
up a couple of hills. I actually, and I'm sure I want to hear your stories, but I'm going to tell stories instead. Um, I was going up a hill, which I haven't really done yet, and I passed a guy on a recumbent, and I was like, I feel good about my life right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing against recumbents. I do. I mean, any way you can ride, any way you want to ride.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But my son, one time on Ragbri, he's like, Dad. He was probably 6, and he's like, Dad, can I get one of those bikes you sit down on and you pedal when you're sitting down? I was like, not for a long time, son. Not for a
Yeah.
long time.
Not when you're living in my house, right?
Right, right. Unless you need it.
Yeah.
And then recumbent on. Anyway, you can ride a bicycle, ride a bicycle.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about you riding a bicycle. You've got this little gap in your work. You're an actor, and um, yeah, 2 months, like that's a big deal. 4,000 miles ish.
It is a
Um,
big deal.
how,
It's funny. Actors have this thing that if you want to get a job or if you need a job, plan a trip. And the minute you buy your tickets for your trip, you of course get a job.
for sure.
Well, I've been planning this bike ride for, maybe almost a year really. And I had some really great auditions for some really great jobs and I didn't get them.
Oh,
And I'm sort of like, oh shit, I guess I really am going to do this bike ride. And so I started the bike ride. But then once I started the bike ride, I got an offer to do a movie. And so I am actually in Minneapolis now. I rode across Oregon and Idaho and Montana and North Dakota, and I'm now in Minneapolis. And I'm going to fly home tomorrow and shoot for 3 days on this movie and then fly back to Minneapolis and finish the trip. And I, I I have a lot of mixed feelings about it. I mean, I I really believe in work, and I believe that I, as an actor, have to work and want to work. And it's a very good movie, and it's a good role in a movie with good people, and so I want to do it. And plus, I need the money. Uh, but I also feel like I'm not done with the trip yet. And am I cheating by going home and coming back and finishing the trip? And this is a sentiment that I've heard many people that I have met on this trip talk about. Am I cheating? Um, I've interviewed this one woman, Kay is her name, and she's
mm-hmm.
71, and she rode across the country for the first time in 1976 when she was 21, and she's doing it again now at 71. And I've crossed paths with her a couple of times because she has gotten into an area where she can't ride, where she can't climb the hill. It's too big, the mountain, or it's too much traffic and she's gotten a ride. So she has leapfrogged in front of me by taking a ride from
Hmm.
somebody. And then I've passed her again. And she said to me, I'm cheating by taking a ride. And I'm like, no, you're not. Anyone out here doing this trip is doing this trip, and there is no cheating. I met another guy who was going, sorry to talk so long, Dave. I met another
That's
guy
what
who
we
was,
do here.
yeah, who was going from the East Coast to the West Coast, and he was flying, and he didn't have any panniers, any equipment with him, and his girlfriend was traveling with him in the car, and he was, we stopped and talked for a while, which is really one of the fun things of a trip like this is you meet people and you talk to them. And he said, I know I'm kind of cheating by, having my girlfriend come and carry all the stuff. And I just think this idea that we're cheating is wrong. You know, Everybody who's out here on the road doing these kinds of trip is doing it with whatever way they can do it or whatever way they want to do it. And that's what counts. And so there is no cheating. So that's my way of saying I'm not cheating by going home for 3 days to do this movie to then come back and finish my trip.
100%. And I love that you bring that up because you're absolutely right. I was just, one thing that I'm allowed to do, I like to say I'm referring to my knee, I can do some normal things, but I can't do anything normally.
Right. Oh,
Um,
that's good. Yeah.
one of the things I can do is rock climb. And so I've got like three and a half limbs I can use. Um, and I was climbing with the guy yesterday, and he's like, "Oh, I kind of cheated on this," and I was like, and then we both are like, "Who cares? Like, you did that route how you want to do that route, how you
Right.
can do that route, and it's the same thing. You didn't pin a number on. You're not
Right.
going for an FKT. You're
Right.
just enjoying life and riding your bike across the country.
Right.
Who cares how you do it?
Right.
You know what I
Exactly.
mean?"
Yeah.
um, you're not, I've had Jay Peterbury on, and we talk about kind of the uh, etiquette or the rules of the Tour Divide or the
Right.
um,
Sure.
Continental Divide Trail. And at the front, yes, there are quote unquote rules, even though there's no rules, there's no start, there's no finish. It's just people show up and ride. But at the back, who cares? Take a break, stay in
Yeah.
a hotel, like go off course. It's your experience.
Right.
And so that's exactly what you're having your experience. And um, I'm sure some of the people who are getting on their bike and continuing the ride tomorrow will be jealous that you get on a plane and go home and do some work and
or
probably eat normal meals.
right. Or not, because I got to tell you, I really had this feeling yesterday. Yesterday I did a very long ride, 105 miles, and to get into Minneapolis. And one of the guys who's been on our show, Brett McGraw is his name, and he's been a guest on Bike Talk a couple of times. He lives in Minneapolis, and he rode out to meet me and ride me in, which was really nice. And I'm actually staying now in his brother's house.
Hmm.
And we have to rely on our friends, our contacts, our people. It's like that Beatles song, I get by with a little help from my friends. And and you just need to do that when you're out on your own for 40, 50 days at a time, going from place to place. Each morning I wake up in a different place, and I don't know what the day's going to bring. And so when there is help available, it's really helpful and really nice.
So I picture all sunshine and roses and tailwinds and downhills. What has your ride been like? Like, talk me through some of the logistics of, like, how do you do a day? How do you find a place to sleep? Where, when do you eat? What are you
Right,
carrying? Like,
right.
what are some of the logistics of how you are experiencing this?
Great. Well, I'm using the adventure cycling maps.
Hmm.
There, Adventure Cycling is an organization that maps all across the country, southern, middle, northern tier, Lewis and Clark route, Pacific Coast route. So I've been using their maps as an overall guide of how I want to go. And then each day I use Ride with GPS to figure out how far I want to go that day and where I want to look to stop, where I want to camp. Is there a campground there, or is there a place I can camp, or what? And the ACA has a lot of information about what's in those towns, because a lot of the towns in North Dakota and eastern Montana are almost not even towns. They're just a little spot on the map. Maybe there's a store there or a bar or something like that, but that's it. So if you don't have proper planning of your food and your water, you can really get stuck. So that's what I've been using to kind of gauge the overall and then the day by day. And partly because of the time of year, the days are long. I've really been enjoying riding late into the evening.
Hmm.
Sometimes I don't get to my destination until 9 or even 9:30 sometimes. Like last night, I got here in Minneapolis around 10 p.m.
Oh, wow.
Um, Luckily, there was a place to stay. I'm staying at Brett's brother's house,
Sure.
and they actually had a cold beer and dinner waiting for us, for Brett and me, which was really great because we were both tired. Um, uh, so I'll get to my destination at 8:39 at night, find a place to camp, set up my tent while it's still light, and then cook a little dinner if there's no restaurant in town. If there is a restaurant, lots of times I like to go to the restaurant and, get a little something there and meet some people and talk to people about what's it like in Enderlin, North North Dakota. But many of those places are closed at that time, or they don't even have an establishment. So because I'm going to bed late, I'm s- I'm sleeping in a little bit in the morning. I'm not rolling out until maybe 10 in the morning, which I think for a lot of cross country cyclists, that's late.
I mean, they've got half the day behind them, I would guess, by
Yeah,
10.
yeah. But I've really enjoyed sleeping in a little bit and getting up and making my coffee at the campsite. And again, if there's a little restaurant in town, or if I know that sometimes I camp 10 or 15 miles away from a little town. So I'll get up and then ride to that little town and then have coffee or breakfast or something like that. Um, and then I just literally ride all day long. I ride from 10 in the morning until 9 at night, and I stop and take pictures, and I've jumped in the rivers a couple of times and swam, and one time I fell asleep at a little picnic table rest stop, and you just kind of meander through the day until you get to your destination, and I've been averaging probably 80 miles a day, 70 miles a day,
Wow.
something like that. So
Do you know where you're headed that night, typically?
yes, yeah. Typically, I know the morning of where I'm going that night. I spend a little bit of time in the morning, kind of figuring out what the weather's like, the wind and the rain and the heat or whatever, or the cold, because it's been cold a fair amount. Uh, and then I figure, well, I can do 62 miles to this town, or 82 miles to that town, and so I'll put them both in my phone, and then the ride with GPS gives you turn by turn directions, which is really handy when you're in an area where you kind of don't know, is it left here or right here, or the road split and you're not quite sure which road to take. The GPS just says turn left on blah 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 street. And that takes a lot of the guesswork out of the travel, which is really nice.
Yeah, you're not having to, when, what is her name, the 71-year-old?
Okay.
When Kay did it in 1977. Although I think you said at one point she did it with a group
Yeah, she did that with
celebrating
a group. Yeah.
America's 200th
Yeah.
anniversary. But
Yeah.
in 1976, they probably had paper maps you had to unfold and figure out, okay, do I go left or right at this
Yeah.
intersection? I don't remember.
Totally.
So that ride with GPS has got to be awesome,
It
probably
is.
game changing. And I'm curious, how are you keeping everything charged if you're camping at night? And it sounds like you're kind of like, if you're 15 miles from a town, it's guessing you're not always at a campground or.
No, no. In fact, when I was going north from in California, and then the first part of Oregon, there were a lot of campsites, a lot of state campgrounds, federal campgrounds. But once I got into Idaho and Montana, those kind of went away, and I had to camp in city campgrounds or dispersed camping, and places like that. And so that was tough. I have a battery bank, a power bank that I can use my to charge my phone and my lights, but that has to be charged every 2 or 3 days. And so I would stay in a hotel every 3 or 4 days.
Hmm.
And occasionally, if I would go into a restaurant or whatever, I would charge things there. But it has happened that I lose power, that my phone dies and I have to get to the next place to charge it.
Do you have a paper map as a backup?
I do. Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
cool. Smart,
Yeah.
smart.
Yeah.
Um, what about your setup? What are you riding and what are you carrying and how's that all work?
Um, I have a Surly Midnight Special, which I really like. I bought the bike maybe 2.5 years ago, kind of with the idea that that's what I wanted the bike for. I wanted sort of a, a street gravel bike. It's not a full on gravel bike by any means. It's a road bike, but it's a dirt road bike, if that makes any sense.
Sure. Yep.
And I've got four panniers, two in the back, and then two small ones in the front. And I carry bike tools and CO2 and tubes in one little one in the front, and water. And then in the other little one in the front, I carry all my power cords and stuff like that, and stuff I need to get into and out of, gloves and arm warmers, which I really use for the sun, and also water in that other front one. And then in the back ones, I have some clothes and my food, which is the biggest volume of space, is the food that I buy every 3 days. Um, and then my camping gear, my tent, my pad, my sleeping bag, and stuff like that.
And based on the fact that you said coffee in the morning, I'm guessing you have a stove you can cook.
Ye Absolutely. I
Yeah.
I have a little jet stove and a little, propane thing, and a little pot that I heat up my water for coffee, and then I heat it up again for oatmeal, and I
Mm,
eat it right out of the pan,
mm.
and then I heat it up a third time to wash everything. And at nighttime, because I'm eating out in restaurants every third day, the food that I'm cooking at night is pretty simple. I'll buy like ramen noodle kind of stuff, and I'll add an avocado to it if I can find an avocado at a store, or I'll add green pepper to it so that it's got a little more flavor than just the ramen noodles. But it's a pretty simple thing, to cook and to eat, and it's hot, and there's a lot of liquid in it, which is really nice because I'm oftentimes a little bit thirsty. So, and then I got to tell you, another thing that I really love is having a beer when I first get to camp. After riding all day long, and then when I pull into wherever I'm going to camp, I have a beer. And if there's no place that sells beer anywhere near, a couple of times I've bought a beer like 20 or 30 miles away and carried it with me the last 20 miles
A
so that I
nice,
have it when I get to camp.
a
Yeah.
nice, warm, well shaken can of
Yes.
beer. Awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. It's kind of funny. I've started a YouTube channel called Pedaling Dirt, and my whole purpose of doing that is we've all seen the mountain bike, like, here's a great trail and here's point of view of me shredding the tabletops and
Right.
banking the curves and hitting all the roots and rocks and rock gardens, and that's all cool, but like, where do you park? Where do you fill up with water? What do you do afterwards? Blah blah blah.
Right.
So my wife and I went on a trip to Puerto Rico. It was 3 weeks after my surgery, and I had nothing to do but watch YouTube.
Right.
And so I stumbled upon Puerto Rican travel channels. And I
Oh,
was like, you know
wow.
what? A travel channel for mountain biking would be cool. You take the point of view, here's what the trail's like, but here's where you park, here's where you get water, here's
Right.
how to find the trail. Can you ride your bike there? Where do you get a beer?
Yeah.
Post race beer. Like the beer, if somebody watches, I've got 2 episodes up. I really started it at a dumb time. Like I can't freaking ride my bike to,
Right.
right now. So it's like, well, I've got 2 up from stuff I had in the can. But if somebody watches, though, you're gonna be, you like, are you an alcoholic? It's all about beer. I'm like, well, I like beer and I like craft
Yeah.
beer, and here's where to find craft beer when you come ride
Yeah.
these trails. So I
Yeah.
100% appreciate that. But this whole trail thing, like adventure cycling, is kind of like this travel channel for riding across the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I could see even going deeper, like when you're going across Montana, like you can find a convenience store at this mile, and there's a little brewery at this mile, and there's a
Yeah.
good breakfast place at this mile. Like that's got to be super helpful and help you plan your day.
It's really helpful because the worst thing is being on a road that is not comfortable to ride on, or being in an area where there are no services, and realizing after the fact that a half mile away is a road that no one is on, that takes you to the same place, or is
Right.
a little town with a great museum and a great campground. And so just having that information, and the ACA really does offer that. And it's an organization that has struggled, um, because of the proliferation of online information.
Sure.
And so they are working very hard to come into the 21st century and have everything online. And I don't know if you follow them at all, but there was kind of an upheaval about whether they sell their building and all of that. And I've had a few people from adventure cycling on Bike Talk
Hmm.
talking about it, and I feel like they're set up to succeed into the future. And I hope it's an organization that does not go away, because one of the things that is so wonderful about bicycle travel is that if I can go from my daughters in San Francisco to my dad in Lansing, then someone else can go to the store and buy their groceries on a bicycle. And we don't need to be in this world where everyone drives a car for everything.
Right.
And that's not a healthy neighborhood to live in. It's not healthy for the people who drive the car. The New York Times printed recently that this proliferation of big SUVs and big trucks are killing so many people because their front hoods are so big. And this is a topic that we've talked about on Bike Talk many times. And, we just have to get out of this environment that you need a car for everything. And I think one of the great things about a trip like mine, or anyone who's doing this, is that, you can ride your bike across the country. And if you can do that, you can ride, to the store or school or work.
Yeah. 100%. And uh, it, one of the reasons that I felt okay naming my show Bike Talk with Dave is because I probably lean towards the competitive side
Right,
of cycling, and you guys really lean towards the advocacy and cultural side of cycling,
right.
and not just encouraging people to ride their bike to the store, but really influencing government to acknowledge cycling as a legitimate form of transportation. Um,
Absolutely.
so, like, where'd that come from? You guys are on show, I don't know, 500 or whatever. You're probably going to do 500 episodes as you ride across the country, which
Right,
I love following your ride. But where'd the show come from? And tell me a little bit about the show, a little more than
right.
we've kind of been insinuating so far.
Great. Well, Nick Richard started the show back in 2010, and when it was on Underground Railroad, Underground Radio. Uh, and, he has always believed that we need to, just what you said, recognize the bicycle as a legitimate form of transportation, not just a toy for, kids to ride around the neighborhood on. And over the years, Bike Talk under Nick's tutelage has had many variations. At one time Nick said, I go for quantity, not really quality, which I thought was pretty funny. And because it was an underground radio show, and people would just come on and talk. And I got involved with it right around before COVID. I'd kind of toyed with being involved earlier than COVID, and had done some things with him. But Nick is the start is the founder of the show, and the real guts. And so sort of when I joined, we made it a little more, because he would just post shows whenever they were done. And so he would do it,
Uh,
one this week, one in 2 weeks or whatever.
I can relate
And
to
and
that.
I Yeah, yeah. But I got him to sort of figure out, how do we make it more findable, more, I'm trying to think of the word, uh just more regular, so that we drop on Thursdays at biketalk.org, or on Spotify, or on Apple Music, or wherever you listen to stuff. And then it plays on the radio in, I think, almost 16 markets around the country over the weekend. And then, of course, next Thursday, the next show drops. And because we're on the radio, we have to follow certain rules. We can't
Yep.
swear. It has to be 58 minutes long. A lot of things that are both good and bad for the quality of the show. We can't support one candidate over another, and things like that. But it also means that we have to turn the show in every Thursday, and it has to be
Right.
this, and so it's been good also. And Nick and I have a slightly different viewpoint of how to get our message across. And I think the fact that we are sort of a yin and yang in that is partly what makes the show good. Nick is let's keep moving, let's be fast, let's cover a lot of topics. And I'm like, let's slow down, let's breathe, let's enjoy the moment, let's get into the nuance of an issue. And because we're not arguing about that, but because we have different opinions about that, I think the show falls right in the middle, and is not too chatty just to be chatty, nor is it too much of a news program where it's just news, news, news.
Yeah, I've actually appreciated your uh, you and Nick's banter back and forth, and then you slide into a story. This past 40 days, 41 days,
Right,
the story's often been people you run into on the ride, which I think is
right,
super cool. It's reminds me of the shows I've done on Ragbri, or some of the
right,
gravel races I've done, or whatever. But I love that there's a banter back and forth between you and Nick, and then you slide into the show. And I would guess your acting and your journalism background, you've got degrees in journalism,
right.
um, helped mold that, shape that,
Totally,
encourage that. You
totally.
understand the story. I totally get Nick. Like, freaking be consistent and be not horrible. Like that was kind of my whole thing when I started. I got to be consistent, and I got to be not horrible,
Not horrible.
and build a show on that. So I totally get it. But I've been a little less consistent the past year or so.
but
Uh,
but not horrible, which is good, because I've listened to
I
your
hope
show,
not.
and I like your show, and I like the fact that you talk about racing, because I'm really into racing, and I just like to hear about those stories. I have a hard time listening to Lance Armstrong's show, the Move. It's an awfully good show sometimes, but it's a little bit too broy for me.
It's very
Um,
broy.
yeah,
I like listening to their discussions during like Tour de France,
right.
because like talk about inside knowledge, and
Yeah,
then
boy. Yeah,
to see their respect for the new kids on the block
yeah.
is kind of, it's like, dude, you were at the front of that, and you're like freaking out at how fast these new guys are going. Like,
Yeah,
that tells me how fast these new guys are going and how
are
hard
going.
racing is.
Yeah. And I think the tour this year is going to be one of the best tours in a long time.
Do you
Because
really?
yeah, well, Vindigo's tough right now. He's riding strong, and Pogacar's riding strong. I mean, I
I
know Wout Van Aert is out, but I think there's a lot of good people in there.
Yeah,
Uh,
I hope so. I hope so. Watching Pogacar this spring has just been like tour's gonna be boring. Like he can
yeah,
just do anything he wants. But Vinigo had a great
Giro,
was it? Yeah, that's
Giro,
right. That's right. But he didn't have Pogacar as his uh,
true.
his competitor. But
His presence, his team, right? Yeah,
yeah, so I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I hope it's exciting. I love an
yeah,
exciting race. Like
yeah.
the here we are going down a little rabbit hole, but the Tour of Spain when um, Sepp
Sepp
Kuss
Kuss,
won, like that was exciting every single day.
yeah,
There were so many stories within the
yeah.
stories. It wasn't.
I was actually in Spain when that was going on. I was my family and I went and we walked the Camino de
Oh, sure,
Santiago,
awesome.
and so I was following the race as I was walking the Camino,
That's
and
cool. That's
it
super
was
cool.
really exciting. Yeah,
Huh? That's a whole nother level of connecting to an event is being in an event in that country yourself. That had to be super
absolutely.
cool. That had
Yeah.
to be super cool. Um, so tell me about the rest of your trip. You are in Minneapolis right now,
Yep.
and you are heading to Lansing, Michigan,
Yep.
and there is
Well,
a
when
lake.
yeah,
It,
when I get back from the shoot, from the film shoot, my plan was to go north around Lake Michigan to Escanaba, Michigan, and then to Mackinac. I was going to go from the Golden Gate Bridge to the Mackinac Bridge, which
oh,
I
that's
thought was
super cool. Yeah.
a good, bookend. But because of this film shoot, I'm losing like 5 days. So I had to cut my trip short. So now when I get back to Minneapolis, I'm going to ride across Wisconsin to Winnetoac, Wisconsin, where the Badger Ferry is that takes you across Lake Michigan, which I've never done. And I think that'll be really fun. So when I get back, I'll have 5 days to get across Wisconsin and then to catch the ferry. And then I've got a bunch of friends from home who are lawyers and Indian chiefs and CEOs. And they're really some of my best, oldest friends. They are going to meet me in Ludington, Michigan, and we're going to spend a day or two riding there and then ride with me back to my dad's house. And so I'm really excited that my old friends are going to help support me at the very end of this trip when I get to Michigan, and then I'll be at my dad's house in mid July. So then I'll be
Awesome.
done.
That's
Yeah.
super cool. And you're spending a week with your dad?
Hmm.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I actually wondered about that if you were gonna you had three choices: north, south, or crossing the ferry. And I think it's cool you're taking the ferry. Um, I was curious if you were gonna go like through Gary, Indiana, and see if you could find the new Chicago Bears stadium footprint or whatever. But it's not in Gary. But whatever. Um, I don't blame you for not riding south and through the whole Chicago hubbub.
Right. Right.
Um, and those who do, I'm sure, follow the adventure cycling route
Trout.
like
Right.
to a T.
Although
So
Chicago's getting to be a pretty good bike town,
really,
and so they've and today I'm going to ride with some advocates in Minneapolis and see some of the bike infrastructure here because they claim that Minneapolis is the number one bike city in the country, but I guess we'll see. Oh, number two.
oh man, you got to come to Des Moines.
Okay, well,
I'm
I'm going to
biased.
tell him that. I'm going to
All
tell him.
right.
I'm going to say Des Moines says they're number one.
Like seriously, almost 1,000 miles of interconnected trails. I'm not saying
Wow.
bike lanes. I'm saying trails,
Yeah.
um, and a bunch of breweries. But we got to get you to Des Moines too. So yeah, I'll be curious to see what you say about Minneapolis because I look at Minneapolis and I'm like, there's a ton of trails, but they're not. They don't. I cannot see how they're all interconnected.
Right.
So I'll be curious to see. I'll be curious to listen to your episode about Minneapolis.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
So after you visit with your dad and then you head back to California, you've done 4,000 miles. Like that's a ride and a half across the country.
Right.
Will there be any kind of nagging like unfinished business in your heart or brain? Like I got to
Um,
get to the Atlantic Ocean.
yeah. Um, I am already feeling that.
Oh, wow.
Uh, I, I, I never felt like I had to put my rear wheel in the Pacific Ocean and my front wheel in the Atlantic Ocean. I never felt like I had to go from Portland, Maine to Portland, Oregon. You know, I just had to go from point A to point B.
Sure.
You know, but I am already feeling I'm going to miss this life. I'm going to miss this experience. I'm going to miss waking up in a different place every day. And my activity for that day is to get to the next place, however I can get there through whatever conditions the weather or the topography throws at me. My job is to get to point B. And that's exciting. It's nerve wracking. It creates a little bit of anxiety. You know, where am I going to eat? But you're constantly solving questions, issues, problems. And they're not all problems. They're just, you know, where am I going to get my water? How much do I need to take? Where am I going to eat? How much do I need to buy? How much can I carry? What is the weather? You know, do I need to change my plan and go a little like there were a few times, you know, one time I was talking with Nick actually when I was on the road and we were going to record bike talk from where I was and I just wasn't in a good spot. And it was 6:30 in the evening, 7 in the evening, and you know the sun doesn't set in North Dakota till 9:30 or something. So I said to Nick, you know, let's push and record tomorrow, and I'm gonna go on. But I had to go like 25 more miles,
Oh,
and you
wow.
know that's a long way. So I put my big boy pants on and just rode, and it turned out to be, Dave, one of the nicest rides I've done. It was twilight, the wind died down, there was no one on the road, and I just had this goal. I have to get to this campground. I can't remember what city it was near or in. And I just went and I got there at like 8:45 or 9 o'clock. And I had my beer.
Warm and
And
shaken or
yeah,
fresh?
it was warm and shaken,
Yeah.
but you know, that's okay. Beggars can't be choosy.
Nope.
And but I found that that evening time of riding is really, really good, really,
Hmm.
really, really wonderful.
Huh. Interesting. So do you think you'll ever like fly out to Lansing, visit your 103-year-old dad, and then ride to the shores of the Atlantic? Like it's,
Um,
you think that'll tug at you?
yes, I do think it will tug at me, and I think that's a good way to do it, to fly first and then ride home. Although people say riding east to west is harder
For sure.
because of the wind.
Yep.
So I am, and I'm really learning that a tailwind is better than a headwind.
It took you, how many miles do you have so far? 3,000?
Yeah, it took me 60 years and 3,000 miles to figure that out.
I could have told you that last week. Oh, that's awesome. Well, listen, I would highly encourage people to tune into your show, whether on the radio or online podcasts or just direct on the computer. You can just click
Right.
on a link and listen. Um, and uh, follow your journey. And I want to wish you the best of. I sometimes feel like luck is You don't want luck. You want fortune. You want good fortune as you cross the rest
Yeah.
of your trip. So, all the best and the best fortune as you go visit your dad.
Well, Dave, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you. I'm a fan of your show, and thanks for helping promote our show, because I think more shows like ours that people listen to, they wake up to this idea that the bicycle really is a wonderful tool and not a toy.
Yeah, 100%. Although I feel like you're kind of treating it like both right now. You're definitely having
Perfect.
fun, but it's a good tool
Perfect.
to get you across the country.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you. I am super thankful for Taylor and his crew for reaching out and connecting with all of us here. I enjoyed meeting him, and I will look forward to following him along on the rest of his journey. Be sure to click on over and subscribe to Bike Talk. After making sure you're subscribed to Bike Talk with Dave, of course. And I hope you enjoy following along on his journey on his podcast, Bike Talk. And you can enjoy his journey in pictures on Instagram at taylornichols.bikelife. We wish him all the best as he continues his ride. Now, I'd also like to invite you to check out my new YouTube channel. Very new. It's called Pedaling Dirt. I've got a couple of videos up. I couldn't have started this at a worse time, but as you may know, I blew out my knee this winter and I'm currently still on the rehab train. And though I am able to ride my bike currently, it's what I call rehab riding. I can ride like 3 to 6 miles. I did 6 miles the other day, and I actually did about a half a mile on dirt. It was delightful, but it's basically zero resistance. I'm really just bending my knee and kind of working on the strength. I'm a long way from shredding sweet single track, which is what this YouTube channel is all about. So the videos that I've been able to make are from footage that I already had. And now I have the makings for my next video, like all the town stuff, but I do need the trail footage. So if I have any volunteers who want to ride the Banner Trails and Aquabi Trails with a couple of GoPros, I would look forward to that. Anyway, I'm in a bit of a holding pattern creating new content now, but that gives you time to check out the videos I do have up. I think my Sycamore episode is kind of fun as I go into the history of that trail, which really is kind of the history of mountain biking in central Iowa. So check out Pedaling Dirt on YouTube, and I hope you help me get to 1,000 subscribers so I can monetize it, and then I can get back to work. So hopefully all times together. Well, in the meantime, thanks tons for tuning in to Bike Talk with Dave, and now you know why it's with Dave. I hope to see you sometime soon out on the roads or trails, whether I'm doing 3, 4, or 6 miles of flat. But I hope you have a great summer, and as you know, nothing beats the simple pleasure of riding a bicycle.